Welcome to Revenue Harvest, a podcast about the fundamentals of sales leadership. Did you know most sales teams don't hit their sales targets? And you can't afford to miss yours. This podcast will give you the answer to questions that will help you lead your team better, consistently exceed your sales targets, and make the most of your career. I'm your host, Nigel Green, and the whole idea behind these conversations is to learn from people who can make you a better sales leader. Let's get started. Ross, welcome to Revenue Harvest, man.
Thank you, brother. Honored to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. So for some people may know you as, I'm a fanboy of Corporate Bro, but they may know you as Corporate Bro. But behind the Instagram, there's a lot more than the humor and the comedian. And you're doing a lot of stuff in the sales world. You've got what looks like to be a fund, an angel fund. And then you've also got a marketplace that we're going to talk a little bit about both of those. But first and foremost, why I wanted to talk to you is not only is your shit hilarious, I mean, it's a scroll stopper.
Thanks.
But the sad reality is that it's funny because it's true.
Yeah.
And you're poking the bear at this bro culture that it's well, I don't know that it's sustainable, it's laughable, it's there's a lot of bad stuff to it. So where do you want to start there?
Yeah. It's true. There's a lot that goes on behind the videos that most people don't see. I mean, that's like the 1% that people get to see is just what the final product is. I'm a guy who came out of sales, like many washed up athletes, didn't know what to do, thought business development sounded interesting, didn't realize it was sales until day one. I got stuck on the phones in training. But there is a problem there. And it's funny because it depends on who you are and what you know about me. There's a lot of people who think that Corporate Bro is not an act, that is not satire, or that most of those people haven't watched, or that it's parody. But it is all born out of the experiences I've had in sales and my life. And I think the reason it resonates, the reason people are like, it's funny because it's true, is because I lived it. This isn't like an act. I didn't just decide I wanted to make fun of sales. I didn't decide sales would be an interesting topic to discuss. It was just my life. And so it was a naturally easy thing as long as my antenna was on, as long as I was aware of what was happening around me. It was just nonstop content. I could just write it down and save it for later and figure out how am I going to make a sketch about this? What were we laughing about today? Oh, my manager said some dumb shit. I gotta do something with this, Yeah. And so it just all came out of that.
So what I wonder, and I'm hopeful for, is that, I mean, you've got like 300,000 plus just Instagram followers. And every one of them, I shouldn't say everyone, probably most of them, like me, resonate with it because they've heard that dumbass shit come out of their manager's mouth.
Yep.
And so is there a point where you get a big enough reach? And is it maybe the goal that you get a big enough reach that all these dumbass managers bump into you and say, oh, shit, that's me?
Yeah, it's already happening. It's interesting because there's a lot of stuff that is, I make fun of that is, it's not inherently bad. It's just kind of cliche. It's just the rah. It's it's the way people address each other. It's kind of it's the dialect of sales. And that has been a certain way for so long. And the change it's been slow, but it's accelerated now, especially as we look at offices are disappearing. It's fragmented. People are by themselves, which has its own unique set of issues. But this idea of the sales floor and the sales pit is starting to disappear just by proxy of what's happened in the world, but also just that people have realized, well, there is a lot of inequality and inequity built into this system as it sits. I mean, we can look at like race numbers and gender equality across this stuff. And we can say, yeah, there's a pretty obvious problem here. And where does it come from? Well, years of systemic issues that aren't going to get fixed because I make a video about it. But if it can do anything, if it can start a conversation, then sure, great. Then it's worth it. But I think there's also a lot of people, unfortunately, that take it as the gospel, like that I'm saying it because it's right. Not that I'm making fun of it. And I do my best to correct those folks, but when your name's Corporate Bro, it's hard because a lot of people assume that that's who I'm trying to be versus a character I've tried to create.
Yeah. And so I want to get your take on this. I want, and I'll share, like, in addition to the fact that you're able to do this, speaks to what I perceive as a lack of self-awareness in sales leaders and maybe startup and tech company leadership, like CEO, founder, product leaders. Do you think that there is a measurably different level or measurably worse level of self-awareness in sales leadership relative to other functional or commercial leadership roles? Or do you think that it's just, you just happen to be exposed to it? And the reason I ask that is that, in my work coaching sales leaders, the average tenure of someone that leads a sales team is 18 months or less. They're done and they're out. And some of that, I wonder, do you attribute that? Obviously, there's misaligned expectations and mismanagement of those, but is there something bigger of self-awareness that we need to talk about?
Yes. I don't think it's noticeably, well, at the leadership level, I don't think it's noticeably different necessarily, but I do think the mentality of what it takes to operate in a sales environment is different than any other element, any other org, product, like legal, account, like all these other marketing, even, like the mentality is, and it's hard because in sales you lose a lot, right? Let me address the self-awareness piece. I think the further up you go on the chain in anything and everywhere in life, including, I feel this to myself, is you start to lose touch with what's actually happening at the bottom. Like, you got a bunch of responsibilities. Your job is to make a business successful. Your job is to make shareholders rich. And like, how do we do that? Well, in their theory, it's any means necessary. It's, coming out of business school, I mean, there's plenty of people that are like, it would be nice to start like with a diverse company, but I'd rather just get the best people right now and worry about diversity later and like equity later. And it's interesting because who am I to say, like, you're fighting for your life as like a startup. You're fighting like just to survive and have this job. Like, maybe you do want to just go get the best people and the best, or do you want to take extra time and kind of foster something that could have a better long-term result? I can't answer that like question for various founders. I could obviously say the moral high ground would be, obviously, like, I'd love to have everyone represented here in the leadership team. And it's hard to do. And then either it works one direction or it doesn't, and it just kind of reinforces itself. And then all of a sudden you're up here and it's just like, I don't give a shit who sells for me. I just need someone who's going to hit numbers. And what's the cost? Like, it's really hard to fire your best sales rep if they're a douchebag. It's hard because they're making more money and bringing in more revenue than anybody else. Like, it is actually it's a real issue that founders have to think about. And one that it's really easy if you're at the bottom, be like, fuck them, fire them. Like, we don't want a piece of shit here. But like, put yourself in that leadership position where your job depends on it, where your livelihood depends on it. Like, you might make a different choice. I'm not condoning it, but like, that's just the reality of what happens to so many of these leaders. Yeah, they're put in a pressure position.
And maybe it's not fair to solve all those problems today, but one problem you definitely are solving is there is this reality, especially in the where you live in tech world and unicorn universe, where some of these founding sales reps make serious coin.
Yep.
But the amount of cash compensation that they receive is really inequitable to the cap table and the amount of equity that they're granted.
Totally.
And so I don't even want to go there. But because what you've done is you've created this parallel path that says, okay, well, you've got this cash, so you can go spend it, or you can put it in other public equities where the return is, well, this month is get the fuck out of here. It's terrible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't want to be there right now.
Yeah, but you're creating this place for these rockstar sellers to stack their cash in other private equities that have a chance to make them not just rich but wealthy.
Yeah, and like, we're still early. So for those who listening and don't know, it's called Corp Capital. Ultimately, it's right now it's not even technically a fund. It's an angel syndicate. We will be rolling out a fund here in the next probably year or so. I've got a friend who's starting to come. Like, one of the issues is accreditation to build something up. Right, you got to make 200K back-to-back years, net worth over $1 million. There's 5 or 6 different ways you can be accredited. And I think a lot of salespeople, they are accredited and they don't know it. And they think like you got to go to the accreditation store and buy the accreditation certificate and go through. No, you don't. You don't. You just You become accredited when you hit these thresholds, and that's just what it is. And my theory has always been, like you said, salespeople get fucked on the cap table. They're mercenaries. Every founder's like, and I'm in the sales hiring game. They're like, well, how can we like give them as little as possible? Like, no, they're salespeople. They just want cash. They just want cash. Not anymore. Like, they only wanted cash because they didn't understand how equity worked. They didn't understand that, these companies that IPO, your employees 7, 10, 20, like now they're wealthy. Now they can go do whatever the fuck they want. And that's because some of them bet on the right company, but also now they understand how it works. So Corp Capital, the idea is just that we pull together. We pull together our funds. We're not asking people to put in $50,000. Like the minimum is $1,000. But if 100 of us put in $1,000, we're making a sizable contribution to these startups. Excuse me. And so, we can do a lot more with that. You don't have to sell for the company you're invested in, right? And a lot of reps don't understand that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I still think at scale, a lot of reps don't understand how it works because they take these short wins in cash. And for a lot of the sellers that we're talking about, they're in, it doesn't matter where you live, in a federal tax bracket, you're in one of the highest of the 14 tax brackets. So you're going to get taxed heavily. And then they don't understand how long-term capital gains work, which is one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is they don't understand you don't get paid a multiple on cash.
Right.
Not only are you taxed differently on the proceeds, but companies are buying the value. And so that's the thing that I think salespeople don't understand is like deferring it into non-cash compensation. It actually trades at a multiple, not just the dollar amount of present day.
No, you're 100% right. And like, that's a big piece of what we're trying to do too, is educate on this stuff. I think a lot of people, the initial response I get from a lot of reps is like, what is this, a fucking Ponzi scheme? And I'm like, oh my God, like, do you understand that like a lot of the leaders in your life have like invested in the tools that you're using right now and that they're making money like by bringing in these tools of these successful companies because they are investors? Like, that's the incestuous world we live in. And a lot of reps just are like, nah, man, I'm gonna go buy a Porsche. Oh, I'm gonna buy a Rolex and that should be valuable one day. And sure, maybe some watches will be valuable one day, but this is another way to diversify. Like, you buy your crypto. I'm in crypto. I'm in the public markets. Why would you not, seeing the valuations of these tech companies, why would you not want to be a part of that?
Yeah, I don't know much about the watch game, but I imagine a Rolex, I mean, if it's $20,000, which is probably what a high-end Submariner, you're not going to sell it in the future for 10x that. You're not going to sell it for $200K. That's just not how the watch game works.
No, and like, it's a fun investment. Like, I collect shoes. I'm probably never going to sell them. In my head, I'm like, oh, they're up a few $100. But like, you want to, I think most sales reps are like, how do I make enough money to do whatever I want? This is one way to do that. It's a better way. Yeah,
it's a better way. And then there's probably some people listening here that say, must be nice, right? That it would be great to have a little bit of disposable income and have the ability to invest in some of these companies. And you're taking on that problem too by creating a marketplace. So if you're not happy with your sales gig, I believe that there's never been a better time to get into sales. All the data points are there. There's fundamentally more demand for good selling talent than there is capable capacity. So you're trying to do some work to create a marketplace. And so how's that going?
Yeah, so it's called Bravado. I wanted to build a sales community for the longest time. I kind of started on Slack, super limited, right? Like, you can't do all the things you want to do. I could have gone out and raised venture funding and hired an engineering team probably. But instead I partnered with one, joined the company, and we're trying to, like you said, build a marketplace that helps hiring be even marginally more efficient. Sales is the closest role to revenue, obviously, revenue generators. If you can do that better than anyone else, multi-bajillion dollar industry idea. Like, sales hiring's been broken for so long, and like these interviews, every company is starved for talent. Only like salespeople are going to be the last typically to go. Depends if you've overscaled. It's a different story. But like, who are you going to fire first? You're going to fire everybody but the people bringing in money. So like, if you're a good salesperson, you can go. Never a better time to go level up. Like, make more money, get more equity. Like, The demand is there. And so we've got about 150,000 folks on the platform right now. Obviously, not all of them are looking for jobs. We've got a community component. We've got some training components that we're building. I want to build like the digital global online sales floor, basically, where if you carry a quota, you got shit to talk about, you want to like hear from other sales savages who are getting it done, like this is the spot. Now we got a long way to go. We just raised some funding. Yay us, our nuts are in the vices of more VCs, but we're on our way. And so I think if we can just do it marginally better than any other recruiting, like I don't even want to necessarily be a recruiting company. Like you said, I want to be a marketplace. I want to be able to like at a very deep like data level, find the perfect rep for the perfect company, like in the perfect situation.
Well, you said something that I wanted to go back to. You said there's 150,000 sellers on the platform, but they're not all looking for jobs. And so if you're an employer and you hear that, like, oh, well, maybe it's not that big of a platform. Let me just intercede and say the best sales talent is not looking for a job. They just don't need one because they're busy making 6-7 figures, crushing their quota. And so in a world where there's more demand than there is supply, there are a lot of sales leaders and CEOs that need to stop accepting applications and join these communities and actually go find and then convince the talent to join the team.
Right. I mean, like as a salesperson, I want to be sold by a CEO. I want to work for someone who can sell. Like, especially if you're going to join an early stage company, the top salespeople, the early salespeople, they're all founders. If you can't sell me on your company, on your vision, how am I going to go do that when it's your thing? It's your baby. Now there's a lot of people who coming up the economy, there's going to be good people out there. So that are getting let go from solid companies or seemingly solid companies. It's going to be a good time to go find some rock stars who should have jobs.
Yep. So last question before we land the plane is, I have this bias and I want you to check it. I've always carried this bias because it's a personal bias. I'm an ex-college football player. You're a washed up minor league undersized baseball pitcher. I believe that it's just true that ex-athletes generally, because somebody who's listening is going to say, oh, well, this one guy was a knucklehead. Generally, they're just better at sales. Does my bias resonate with you in any way? And if so, why?
I think it's true. But for a couple reasons. And it's not, I wouldn't limit it just to athletes. If we're saying that at face value, absolutely. But give me someone who's like been in the service industry, right? Give me someone who's like had to wait tables or like bartend. Those are people who are dealing with people all day, every day, dealing with a bunch of bullshit. And like, I just want someone who's well equipped who can deal with adversity, who can handle losing, who can bounce back. Like sales is just highly emotional. And there's a lot that goes into it. And there's a lot of things you got to manage in different times. And there's also a lot of shit out of your control. And people who have experience doing that, athletes in particular, are just better suited for it. Athletes are often very process oriented. As a baseball player, it's like, if I throw my best pitch every single time, I'm going to give up some home runs. I'm going to give up some runs. But if I did that every single time, when I look at the end of the year, the body of work, I'm probably going to have had a pretty good year. Salespeople know that. They're going to lose all day long. But they put their best pitch on it each time. They do the right things throughout the course of the year. They're going to look back over their quota, see that they blew it out, and they're going to be in President's Club and make a shitload of money. So, I think there's a lot of different ways to get into sales. I love sales because it is the great equalizer. I just do think that there are people that are better suited mentally to handle the task of sales, of which there is a lot of mental. There's a lot of mental weight that goes into it. I mean,
yeah,
the weight room at 4 a.m., right? Like, you got to go hit someone. Someone's going to hit you on every single play. But who's going to put who on their ass? Like, that
exactly.
That's what it is. So I don't think that's wrong. I think I would venture to guess there's studies that would say athletes are better suited for a sales role. But I think there's also a lot of things that people overlook. Like, I do think the service industry, I think like retail, like there are people who grind. That's who you want.
Yeah. There's one notable study that Salesforce conducted, and the data shows if they come from a STEM education, so science, technology, engineering, math, and they played college sports, But then the real caveat is if they played an individual sport. Those individual athletes, they're apparently they're just savages. I think about swimmers that are just in the pool every morning by themselves, golfers,
yep.
blasting balls. That's what it is. Like, yeah, you're on a sales team, but you got a number.
Totally. And I put baseball in that a lot just because every action is so individual. And like, you get to hit, you're by yourself, you're pitching, you're by yourself. And yeah, your team can make some plays behind you, but like each action is so compartmentalized. It's just like sales. And so, yeah, like you add the STEM piece in there, like now you're talking about, I think the best salespeople separately are the converted sales engineers who have figured out how to like handle the mental weight of sales because they're smart. They're having intelligent conversations, and the best salespeople who are selling the highest value deals have to have intelligent conversations. They're self-aware. They have high EQs. They're smart, but they also can handle the adversity. So, I mean, that profile that you just described, yeah, give me a team of those. No question. Don't even show me this. You just described that, and I would take every single one of those people.
Well, Ross, thank you so much. I'm going to link everything that we talked about, Corporate Pro, the syndicate, and then the platform. I'll link that in the show notes so that anybody that wants to learn from you or connect with you, and you're active on LinkedIn, you're posting daily, they can find you there. Any question I should have asked or didn't ask, or anything you want to say before we shut her down?
No, I just think like for me, and I don't know who the whole demographic of the audience of this pod is, but like, when you see salespeople or you hear about salespeople and you think like, and you don't know much about sales, your immediate thought is that salespeople are shitty, that it is a honorless job. And it's just, if you really, those are the people that are making it happen. Like you're selling something at all times in your life. And the ones who can do it the best are the people who go the farthest. And so my whole thing has always been about putting respect on sales names, on the sales name. And there are a lot of shitty salespeople out there, just like there's a lot of shitty engineers out there. There's a lot of shitty people out there. But the best of the best, like there are a few like it. So that's all I got to say about that.
Dude, well, thanks so much. Keep pounding the Instagram and having me stop my scroll and get an audible laugh. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
my friend. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you out there.
Music from this episode is from my good buddy Justin Adams. You can listen to Justin's music in Spotify or Apple Music. Thank you, Justin, for the music, and thank you for checking out another episode of The Revenue Harvest.